And streetcars did get started in 1909. Some of them didn't get finished until 1910 and 11. There were 5 different lines, and they thought 20 years before they were going to have a streetcar system, and the mayor of New York was supposed to be a stockholder, but it didn't come to. Finally, some local people financed it, and it was a great boom. They used the streetcar, the electric cars, from 1910, 1909 and 10, till in the 30s, and then began replacing them with buses. That's the Jefferson Hotel on the left. You can see that the dray was there to haul freight. So the automobile, the truck, was not very much in evidence at that time. And the first airplane flight in Iowa City, the first airplane flight in the state of Iowa, was October 13, 1910, as you'll see on that picture. It was at the fairgrounds, which was right to the west of where City High is today. I was out there with my folks. It was a big event. There were 10,000 people in Iowa City. There were special trains from Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Muscatine, Waterloo. It was a big event. I think my folks paid $1 to get into it. And Captain Baldwin was the Red Devil he was flying. It had bicycle wheels on it. It just looked like it was put together with wire. Even as a small boy, I didn't think it was very well built. I paid 15 cents the day before to get in a tent, see it up close. And that day, Captain Baldwin made 3 or 4 flights. He got about 150 feet off the ground and went 3 or 4 miles. Each time he'd come back to the field, and then the wind changed. He had to go fly to the east, up over what is now City High. He couldn't clear the trees. I could still see him dipping those wings to the left, trying to squeeze between the trees, but he couldn't make it, and he crashed, and the plane was wrecked. But he was not seriously hurt. The plane was a complete wreck. And you know, the thing that I never failed to marvel, I saw that flight in 1910. 49 years later, Martha and I flew around the world in one of those contraptions. That's what happened in airplane history. And everybody was talking about airplanes. The photographic studio had this sort of a plane. My folks got my picture taken in the plane. This is a 1908 automobile. That was a Ford. 3-inch tires on the front, 3.5 on the back. That seat in the back, that single seat, was always referred to as the mother-in-law seat. And there were no paved roads for years. This is Rochester Avenue. That's Rawson Creek down ahead. That's Fred Kent's car. Regina is a long ways behind where we are. So you can see this was close to Iowa City and still mud roads. When Mark and I were married, we were in Chicago on our honeymoon, and we were driving back, and the roads were frozen when we left. And but when we came back, why, they melted, it thawed, and it was just a quagmire. They were paving as far as Walton then, and we went 43 miles from 11:30 at night till 7:30 in the morning. It took us that long to get those 43 miles. We were just bumping and in low gear a good share of the time. It was pathetic. I never could understand how we make so much progress with railroads, interurbans, these other vehicles, and we were still in the mud, on the mud road. Why, Charles Lindbergh flew the Atlantic before Iowa City was out of the mud. It's incredible. But 1927, they paved Highway 6 to the county line west, and 1927, they paved it east to the county line. Then a little later, they paved to Cedar Rapids. And then the Depression hit. Of course, that slowed everything down. I remember after that 1922 football game, Iowa versus Minnesota, it was in the old stadium. But there was a big crowd there, and there were 500 cars stuck in the mud between Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. Some of them slept in the cars, some of them slept on the floor in farmhouses. Some of them sliced through the mud to get to the interim tracks. Oh, it was a mess. You don't realize what we used to have to go through. I was in the ice cream business, and we would, in the spring, we just couldn't go out by car to the small towns to line up customers. I'd have to take that club or the Rock Island to call on our trade, and it'd be May before we could drive. So I never, of course, one reason they say that we were so late getting the roads paved was because there was a good railroad connection to every town in the state of Iowa. Every county seat had at least one railroad into it. And so there just wasn't quite the urgency for gravel roads and paved roads, and there wasn't the automobile for quite a while too, for that matter. But that's one of my little pet comments. I can't stay off of that. Iowa City had 3 breweries up there within a block on Market Street. This was the Hutz Geiger Brewery. That was not the first. England had the first brewery, and this was the second, and then there was another one on the corner of Market and Gilbert Street. And they did thriving businesses. 3 breweries, and today I don't know that there's a single brewery in the state of Iowa. And this was the Great Western Brewery. That later became the Iowa Brewing Company. And I remember their beer. I used to see the signs on all these different saloons on the walls. Earlander beer, the beer that made Milwaukee jealous. There used to be saloons. They weren't taverns. They called them saloons. There were very strict rules on the regulation. McInerney, this is the McInerney Glass here, was located down where the Holiday is today, where the Strand Theater used to be. And that was the longest bar, they said, west of Chicago. 150 feet long, went from clear to the alley. And in those days, the windows of the bars, the saloons, had to be open, wide open. They couldn't have a stool, they couldn't have a chair or a table. They had to stand up as long as they could. And there was no back door, so people couldn't be slipping in the afternoon to get a quick one. So they were quite strict. In those days, people were either wet or they were dry. There was no middle ground like there is today. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah. Yep. No middle ground like there is today. And there was lots of trouble too. People who were strong drives. I know one man, an attorney, who had bricks thrown through the window of his bedroom, almost hit his mother-in-law. And there'd be I remember there was a brick chapel out on the east of 4th Street, Methodist brick chapel, and they were having a temperance talk, and the West came out and disrupted the meeting. And it's rather interesting. There was a man named, he lived 4 miles east of Iowa City. His daughter married Tom Farrell, the bank. It doesn't matter anyhow. He was a good Irishman. He was not a dry, but he couldn't stand the fact that these people had disrupted that meeting. And so he went to these people at the brick chapel. He said, the next time you want to have a temperance meeting, you'd come to my farm and you'd have it there. And I'll take these wets in hand, and I'll tell them they better not come out to my farm and disrupt the meeting. And he was a wet, but he wouldn't stand for that kind of treatment. So it drives me mad. I can't think of that name. I don't know what difference it makes, but I'll think of it before I leave.
Casey.
Casey, that's it.